Ladies and gentlemen, we are so excited to have so many of you join us here this evening. We're going to get officially started in a few moments. In the meantime, let me walk you through a few features for tonight's gathering. My name is Phil Kilbridge. I'm NatureBridge's president and CEO. Tonight, we're going to be using that chat function at the bottom of your screen for those of you who've used Zoom a time or 100. Maybe we can start things off by using the chat function, pull it open, go to all panelists and attendees. With Memorial Day in our rearview mirror, perhaps there's an epic outdoor location that you plan to travel to or visit, a state park, a national park, perhaps internationally. Let's make sure that chat function is working and let us know a place that you hope to explore in the outdoors in the next 3 months. And again, that'll help me know that this whole thing is working well. Well, of course, Lake Crescent, North Cascades, Yosemite, a lot of West Coast, Glacier, Seven Devils Mountain in Idaho, Orcas Island. Oh my gosh, it is a Pacific Northwest heavy crowd, but we've got folks all across the United States and indeed into Canada and other locations. So thank you for letting us know where you hope to go this summer. So I'm going to turn my video on and I hope we'll still show the screen in the background. Again, my name is Philip Kilbridge. I'm NatureBridge's president and CEO, and I'm just delighted to have you all here this evening. Tonight's event is a chance to celebrate an immense and epic conservation victory for the largest dam removal project in the history of the United States. And we are going to be welcoming and led through this journey by a couple of outstanding Pacific Northwest and national leaders. So you'll hear from them shortly. We are pleased to continue a geographic journey through these campfire chats. This is the 6th of our campfire chats, and we've explored Yosemite National Park, Golden Gate National Recreation Area. We've heard from leaders in Washington, D.C., and we are just so honored to have you here tonight. Did you know that this is our 50th anniversary? And we have had over 1.5 million student alumni of NatureBridge programs. We are the National Park Service's largest nonprofit educational partner focusing on overnight education. And one of those campuses is on Lake Crescent in Olympic National Park, where we've had over 250,000 students and adults go through our programs. It is our 50th anniversary, and it has been a trying year. So particularly in a time of COVID, we know how critical it is that we find ways to get kids off of screens and into their outdoor spaces to explore and learn. Now, we pivoted to virtual learning, but we're now back to in-person learning with DC public schools, with our programs in the Golden Gate National Recreation Area and well beyond, including in Olympic National Park. And I want to give a huge thanks to each and every one of you who have leaned in as volunteers, as leaders, as donors in this last incredible 15 months. It is our 50th anniversary. It was in September of 1971 that we hosted our first programs in Yosemite National Park. And here we are 50 years later, still going, soon to be going strong. And we've had a remarkable number of 50th anniversary sponsors join us, including our incoming board chair, Susan Bourne King, and her husband, Steve King, Dawn Reese, who 50 years ago started the Yosemite Institute, which became NatureBridge, and Alaska Airlines, a Pacific Northwest icon. Also at the top level were Yosemite Conservancy, PG&E Corporation Foundation, Bank of the West, REI, Clean Canteen, Oracle, and so many more. And because this is a Pacific Northwest event, I really want to highlight some of those incredible organizations, corporations, businesses, and individuals in the Pacific Northwest who make our work possible. So huge thanks to all of you for joining us and for joining us tonight. And now it is our incredible honor for me to welcome the phenomenal Lynda Mapes. She's going to be our guide and facilitator this evening. Now, her bio indicates that she's a journalist for the Seattle Times who specializes in coverage of the environment, natural history, and Native American tribes. But she is so much more than that. She's a Bullard Fellow for Harvard University and a Knight Fellow in Science Journalism at MIT. She provides a megaphone to the speechless. She champions the outdoors. She explodes with passion, and she is brilliant. Just yesterday, Lynda's 6th book was released. It's called Orca: Shared Waters, Shared Home. I hope you'll have a chance to order it and read it soon. It is an incredible pleasure of mine to introduce our guide for tonight's conversation, Lynda Mapes. Lynda?
Good evening, everyone. I'm thrilled, delighted to be here with you tonight. And, so picture the campfire. Put yourself wherever you are tonight in the Pacific Northwest. It's an absolutely beautiful day, very unseasonably warm and sunny and gorgeous. And, we're gathered here tonight in celebration and in community for something very, very special, which is to talk to 2 of the people who helped make the largest dam removal ever in the world happen. For those of you who don't know the story of Elwha Dam removal, I will quickly set the stage for you. Picture 2 dams built back in the day. One of them, the Elwha Dam, the lower of the 2, was built in the early 1900s with absolutely no fish passage whatsoever. The second dam was built 5 miles upriver from there, called Glines Canyon Dam. These were very, very big dams. The lower dam, more than 100 feet tall. The Glines Canyon Dam, more than 200 feet tall. They'd been in place generating power for about a century, and the idea was to create industry in a place that was still a wild place. The city of Port Angeles really didn't have any industrial activity in the early 1900s, and a developer, Canadian, named Thomas Aldwell, decided to bring electricity to the woods and do it with the Elwha River. That was then, but this is now, when the wealth of our region isn't counted in kilowatts as much as it is wild salmon. We've got lots of energy. We're very fortunate in that way. We have abundant hydropower, but what we have way too few of is wild salmon, especially Chinook salmon. And the salmon of the Elwha River, the Tyee, are famous everywhere in the world. They are the biggest salmon in the sea, a glory to fishermen, but especially a glory to the first people of this river, the people who carry the name of the Elwha River, the Lower Elwha Klallam Tribe. So tonight we're going to talk about how it is that 2 of these dams actually were taken down by an act of Congress. How it is that something that was regarded as crazy, could never happen. If it did happen, it wouldn't work. How it came to be the pioneer project and looked to around the world now by conservationists, by tribes, by communities everywhere who are looking to solve problems, environmental problems, community problems, infrastructure problems by taking out old stuff that doesn't work and bringing back the fish that are the lifeblood of these regions and of the first people of their culture. So it's with great pleasure that I get to introduce 2 of the main people who made that happen tonight. I'll start with Chairwoman Frances Charles. I've known Frances Charles, I'm happy to say, for quite a long time now. We've worked together on many stories, not only about the environment. Frances Charles has been chairwoman out at Lower Elwha now for quite some time. She keeps getting reelected and reelected and reelected. And not only that, being willing to serve over and over and over again in what has to be one of the very toughest jobs in the world. And she learned it from her dad, and she gets her leadership skills additionally from her elders, not only on the mainland there at Port Angeles at the reservation, but across the water in Esquimalt, where the community continues. I'll tell you something about Frances. She has a nickname. She's beloved to those of us who are lucky enough to know her as Gator. Short for alligator. Yeah, you heard me right. And with good reason, because Frances, who earned that name on the softball field, is also known to all of us here in the Pacific Northwest as the one who will put on the bite as needed. When she needs to go on the defense for the youth, for the elders, for the salmon, for her people. So Frances, thank you for being with us tonight. I'm incredibly honored to share this evening with you.
Thank you.
Tonight is Senator Bill Bradley. So Senator Bradley, what can you say? Here you are, you're a basketball star, you're a Rhodes Scholar, you ran for president, almost made it. But we out here in the Pacific Northwest, we will always associate you with the Elwha Dam removal. And Not only that, but we will always remember you for the one who brought us not only salmon, but something even more enduring, something even more important. The understanding that change was possible, that you could take something as big as a dam, 2 dams that had always been there, that some people were still really attached to, proud of, and take them down for the good of the people and for the salmon. And you know what you said to us then, I want to say tonight, which is you brought us not only salmon, but hope. So I'm thrilled to be with you both, and I'd like to get right into our conversation tonight and share with one another. I think, first of all, I'd like to hear a little bit just between you two. I mean, when was the last time you saw each other? You've soldiered together in such an important cause, and you probably don't see each other that often. Is this the first time in a while?
It's been the first time in a while since we started the dam removal project on the lower dam.
You look better and better.
So
Yeah, it's been almost 10 years.
Yeah, it's been many years. So it's an honor to have this opportunity to see you again from afar, all of you that are participating in tonight's activities of what's taken place. But again, I really want to say thank you to NatureBridge for all of the work that you guys do, just as well, not only for the young, but for the old as much. But it's been an honor with working on not only this project, but many other projects just as much, because it's for the future of our generations. And that's always been the goals of our community, is having those. But really looking back at the ancestors, I always tell the communities and others that this is an opportunity that we've taken the footsteps of our ancestors, previous members that started this path for us, and we've been honored and humbled to follow through with their footsteps that they started on through that process. Our elders and our veterans and our youth and our communities and the surrounding communities and the partnerships that we had to engage with one another for the trust and the opportunities. But also, I really want to recognize and say congratulations to the class of 2021, especially in these trying and challenges that we have in our life right now through the process itself. But we're a small tribe. We're about 6 miles west of Port Angeles in Washington State. And it's been very trying, and going back and looking at our story. And at times it's really unbelievable that we've been successful as much as we have been through the whole process, because we were always told that it would never happen. This isn't going to happen, not in my lifetime, not in other lifetimes, but to Vail, we've been successful, known with the Klallam people, and we're known as a strong people. And having the opportunity to go back and hear the stories from our elders, hear the stories of not only the creation site that was, I kind of say rediscovered in some ways, but really it's always been there, that's been covered with the lower dam proportion of it. And having the story told to our elders that talked about it, and being able to utilize the camera, or not only the cameras, but the cell phone, to be able to share the story with our elders that could not take the hike in with us that day, and telling them that this is not a myth, it's a reality, and sharing it with not only our youth, and to this day with the language programs and what we teach, the history and the acknowledgments that we have in the public schools to utilize our language, but to carry those generations forth. So it's something that we heard our elders talk about, how they used to play down at the river. They lived down at the river, and they would see the Chinook runs come in, and they were so thick that they would be able to walk on the backs of the Chinook runs. And those are the dreams that we see, and the dreams that we have, and the opportunities. But feeding the salmon people spiritually, our beliefs and our stories that go on and beyond with what we have been told, and having the first salmon ceremonial, having it with Oliver Bosco Charles, and having it with Rachel Hageman, and the generations that keep carrying on. So these are things that give us the pride and the force to move forward with what we have for our future generations and their futures to come forth. So it's very humbling to be sitting here just to be able to talk a little bit with what we had accomplished, with what we had moved forth with, and having you, Senator, because you were a big part of that, and having listened to your stories of our elders that went and visited you back in Washington, D.C.
I'd love to hear some of those memories, Senator, of, how in the world did you do this? I mean, I'm curious if, when you initially got started on this project, really, back there in Washington, D.C., did people just kind of say, well, that'll never happen? Did you hear the same thing Frances did? And how did you prepare?
Sure. Well, I was chairman of the Senate Water and Power Subcommittee of the Interior Committee and Energy Committee. And so part of my responsibility was overseeing water in the West, the Bureau of Rec, for example, Bureau of Reclamation, other things. And so I heard the story of the Elwha Klallam Tribe and what had happened. And I never will forget that day. I think it was 1991 when I think Chairwoman's aunt, B. Charles, came back, and Carla Ellison, and I think Bev Bennett and Rachel Kowalski came back to testify before the Senate. And they told the story of the tribe and what happened. And there was a big parade of men who also testified. I don't remember them, but I do remember the 4 women. And they gave very powerful testimony to how central the river and the salmon are to the Elwha Klallam people. And so from that day forward, I was in their corner all the way. And I always like a little challenge, like being the first one to take a big dam down because I was in charge of all the other dams. But it was a long process, and we got a lot of people involved. I mean, I had a great staff person, Tom Jensen, who had deep convictions about the Elwha and had known about it for years. I had actually the guy who was a lobbyist for the paper factory in town. He also convinced them, as a Japanese company, to get their power from Bonneville. So he became an advocate too. And then you had the representation. Norm Dix, a congressman, played a heroic role over the years. And, also Patty Murray, of course, got appropriation after appropriation. And Rock Adams and Booth Gardner, and a lot of pals played a big role in this. And so for me, it was a very heartfelt experience. And I never will forget when I last saw the chairwoman, was when the dam began to tumble down. And here we were all seated up there. And then with that one blast of dynamite on that September afternoon, the dam began to tumble down, and the herons and beavers and bears come back, and the salmon are back, and the life of the mountain and the oceans are joined. And it was a kind of a moment of real, it was extremely moving. And what had happened was, I had lost my parents a short time before. And as I was standing on the banks of the Elwha on that day with that blast of dynamite, I thought to myself, I don't know what happens after death. But when I saw the mountain water rush to the ocean, the sea, and saw the Elwha coming back to life, I thought, well, maybe the rhythms of nature give us a clue into what lies beyond.
You're going to make me cry, but happy tears, good tears. And I love how you evoke what is so much bigger even than salmon, as much as we value them, which is the human spirit. I mean, it was a reward of the human spirit that doesn't give up, that hopes, that keeps trying, that draws the circle bigger and not smaller, and steps.
Yeah, sure. There were plenty of times when people tried to derail this. Right?
Oh yeah.
but we just kept going, just listened and made adjustments and listened, and we kept getting allies. And pretty soon we got enough allies that we passed the bill. And then we waited 20 years of scientific studies, right? I mean, how much can you study the river? 20 years. And then that blast of dynamite and the dream began to come true. And now, from whenever I'm in the Pacific Northwest, I try to go by the Elwha, and I like going out there alone. You know, I know how to drive out to the viewpoint now. And I not only think about what we did together, but I thought about how this really is a enormous activity of hope. I mean, you know, you can't get anything done, but if you can hope, then you can do things. And I think that the story of the Elwha reinvigorates the whole idea of hope.
You know, that is so true. And I want to remember together with you about that day when they first took that excavator. Remember, it was painted gold, the spray painted gold. And they, you know, took that first whack at the lower dam, and everybody was there. You remember, Frances, the elders were there, and the songs, the prayers were beautiful. And to me, it was so special that Adeline was there. Adeline Smith, you know, she was born between construction of the two dams. So she was just one of the many who said it could never happen. She'd never see it happen. And yet there she was. And Wendy was pushing her in her wheelchair. And, you know, there was a moment that it hit me particularly hard because I looked over the wall of the dam, and guess who's down there in the water? The fish. Because it was September. So of course they're coming back. That's when they always came back, August, September time. And there they were, long as your leg, still coming back to that lower dam that they never gave up trying to go where they are supposed to go. And they knew that as truly as your people knew that this is how it was supposed to be. And there were the fish. And Adeline, she looked over with me because I pointed. I said, Adeline, look, the salmon are here too. And she looked at them and she turned over her shoulder and she looked up at the mountains, Senator, the very mountains you were just talking about. And she pointed and she said, they're going to go up there. And I'll never forget that.
No, very memorable.
What a circle of life, and what a circle of accomplishment that both of you, you know, made happen in this impossible, crazy world. You know, you pass a bill in 1992, you got to wait 20 years for the Obama bucks to finally, you know, set off the first dynamite. And, you know, Frances, I'd love to hear you talk about how you never gave up. And you know, you're meanwhile running an entire government, right? And you're dealing with everything that a tribal chair has to deal with. And yet you never let this flame go out. And, you know, I'd love to hear you talk about the strength and what kept you going.
The challenges itself. It's something that not only was it that it was the belief of our people and the belief of our elders, especially the elders that really had told their stories about how the upbringings of what had occurred to them in their lifetime, what had occurred to the Native people in their lifetime, and having to hear the stories of how our survival of our people had to sneak into the river to get their food and to be able to have their smokehouses going at a later time. And hearing the challenges of their lifestyles and the changes that have taken place during the durations of our lifestyles just as much, but being able to really walk that path with what they started, because they started that path for us, the ancestors, the creator, and a lot of the previous council members. I really raised my hands up to them because they really put those footsteps ahead of us to help ease that. And really it was coming back to the communication basis of having to sit down with one another to understand one another and to be able to educate and have them learn of who we were, what the Indian people and the first Klalams that we were at that point in time, but identifying our territories, our treaty rights, Hoko River, all the way to Hamahama, and even Esquimalt. We have relatives in Esquimalt, Beecher Bay, and some of those areas, and making those connections. But it really had an impact not only on us, it had an impact on all other nations, international, just as well. But it wasn't only the natives that had an impact on all of the races that were out there, and having an understanding and the educational partnerships that we had to do. We had to really work within ourselves first so that we were all saying the same thing, but really listening to the elders on what their processes were and where do we go for these next steps, and are we all in this. And our fishermen, our people who had come to us and said that they would no longer fish Elwha River. To this day, we still haven't opened up the Elwha River because they wanted to make sure that the runs come back. They wanted to make sure that our future generations had those opportunities in their livelihood. And I really acknowledge all those that had passed, not only from our tribes, but all nations out there, because there was a lot of hard work and dedication that was put into this on our behalf as well as their behalf. So as that worked the dam sites up there, and like Bill said, he lost his parents, and we've lost so many of our elders that worked through this just as well. Billy Frank, we lost him just as well. But having all of the opportunities to sit down and work with one another, to understand one another, to educate one another, and pull in all different agencies, all different companies, and the things that we had to do. But when that day happened, the tears of joy. I mean, even looking at the pictures today is really heartwarming on that part of it, because we lost so many people in that manner. But it's the tears of the joy that had taken place, and bringing back our songs, bringing back the dances, and watching our speeches from our kids. Oh my God. And having the opportunities, and all in Klallam languages, and watching the pride from our elders standing there looking at that. So it's really heartwarming.
You know, for me, this whole experience was a great privilege. It is not always possible, rarely possible, that you can redeem a broken promise. And the treaty was signed. The tribe was promised land, and the salmon would be protected, but they weren't. And on that day, that September day, we redeemed our broken promise. The courage of the tribe is just really startling. I've just read a novel by Louise Erdrich, who is a great novelist, called The Night Watchman. And it's about the Chippewa people and how they were going back to Congress to testify so they wouldn't be decertified. And the description of them, there were 4 or 5 people traveling back to Washington to make the case before a congressional committee in a strange kind of circumstance. And when I was reading that in the novel, I thought of B. Charles, I thought of Carla Ellison, I thought of Bev, I thought of Rachel, and what they must have been going through that day when they came to testify before the committee. All the things that were bubbling up in their minds and their hearts, and to see them triumph so gloriously is just one of the most wonderful things that I've experienced.
And it's an opportunity for the salmon to come back, because we had the opportunity of seeing the runs that started coming back. Not only a few, we seen hundreds of them come back into our river. And even with that first dam being out, that first week that the lower dam was out, we've already seen a few of the fish that went beyond that. And that was something of joy that our fisheries crew had videotaped and underwater and whatnot, but watching that salmon go up beyond that. lower dam was, it was a joyful day for everybody. It was something that was shared with our entire staff as well as our community in regards to that. But there's the challenges that we have in regards to Snake River and some of these other opportunities for others to remove other dams. And that was something that we had talked about earlier on, is that this is a process. We didn't give up. I mean, I have to admit, there was times that we thought we were at the mist, we thought we were at our end, but we just kept charging. We kept charging, and we would get re-energized, and we would continue down that path. It took 100 years for this, so don't ever give up that hope, because it took us 100 years.
You know, the law passed in '92, and so for the first 4 years, I kind of oversaw the implementation of the law before I left the Senate. And I remember those scientific debates about how many decades before the salmon will come back, you know, and these scientists making arguments. How long did it take, Chairwoman? About 4 years,
Yeah.
5 years, and the salmon are back.
Yeah.
And it just shows you the resilience of nature, which also should give us hope.
Yeah. And it's the beauty of seeing Mother Nature itself. I know when Mount St. Helens blew there, you know, we were at the midst of our ends of what was going to take place there, but we started seeing Mother Nature in its own way heal itself. When Mount St. Helens blew, we started seeing the trouts being running up the river there through the news and whatnot. But it's something, one time, a few years ago, I walked down to the river, because I'd always try to go down there and take pictures and just see the changes. I have the opportunity of driving over the river every day from my home to work and whatnot, but seeing the changes of it, but also recognizing that I counted over 30 eagles one day down there along the banks of the river. So we have the nature in itself coming back and plentiful, and the studying that's being conducted along the river and up the river, and a lot of that. But yet hearing the stories of our young ones that are still being taught, some of the stories that our elders had talked about, and the little pamphlets that are being provided to them, so that they know who they are and where they're coming from, and themselves sharing it. Even with NatureBridge, that was one of their projects of what was their thoughts of how with the dams being out, and they came back with our tribal member youth that come back with wonderful stories and unbelievable belief that they had, and it was something that was really joyful for us, because we knew they were paying attention, and they were listening to their parents and their elders, and having those opportunities. And even today, listening to the stories from Beverly Bennett and Carla Elfson and Rachel and some of the others, you know, that it's still hard for them to believe too. And here we are today.
I think that, you know, I have this great memory that I want to share. Right after the creation site was finally revealed again, because the reservoir was drained in the lower dam. And there was so much excitement about this. That it's something that had been maybe regarded as just a story by some people, you know, because it wasn't anywhere in their experience. They were young. And this, as you say, Frances, it happened 100 years ago. Suddenly, this story that the elders had always held and shared, it was true. And it seemed to just engender a kind of recovery that was really important, because it meant, well, actually, that means everything's true, doesn't it? It means we've always been here, just like they said. These village sites up in the mountains, just like we said.
Yeah.
There is this sense of the tribe's truth being revealed to the world as this river went back into its natural channel, and the watershed was returned to its original health. And this is a process that will go on long after we're all gone. But the other thing that happened at that time when the creation site was revealed was, I remember Jamie Valadez, she had a necklace with a little vial of water from the creation site that was made as a gift for some of the elders. Here, it's from the place you always told us about, and these treasured necklaces, you know, they were so much more than Tiffany jewelry. They were among the most precious things that could ever happen, that recovery. And I think that, you know, I can remember hearing the stories from Johnson, you know, about how the language came from the sounds of nature, the sounds of the river, and to hear that sound of the river once again, that terrible silence of the river behind the dam, just a lake. You know, first we got the sound, and then we got the salmon.
Listen to the
And it just such a, I guess I just want to hear you speak a little more, Frances, about how this recovery is about more than fish. You know, it's your people coming back into a wholeness too.
a lot of it also is spiritual, like you're talking with the creation site. That is one of the spiritual sites that have been talked about in regards of our youth to adulthood on the path of their livelihood through that process. There's many stories of how some of the elders, one of the elders got lost in his years as he was becoming a man, and he had worn himself out, and he had help from a Sasquatch. And then we have the Thunderbird story. So we have a lot of the stories, but some of them are spiritually that we don't talk too much publicly about because of the locations that we have along the river itself and other territories that we have. But again, not only that, we've had some campsites that were determined to be 450 years old as well as 800 years old and older along the river itself in regards as we went up through the seasons of the hunting and the gathering and some locations that we had intermixed with other nations up there for trade and some of the medicines. But that's one of the things that is really coming arise now is the medicines, the herbs, and the opportunities that our youth are starting to learn more about, and they're making and gathering some of the medicines. Not only that, with the weaving and the cultural values of making some of the basketries and their cedar hats and the regalias, and being able to utilize it for the dye from the red ochre that has come from certain locations. And it's something that really had strived many in many ways that could be that's really undescribable. I mean, even that day is to this day has been there's part of it that's still undescribable for what we had felt, but looking at the eyes and seeing what it had meant to our elders and talking the stories today to the younger generations. I mean, my grandson, he was only a couple years old when we were down there. Now he's 11 years old. So, you know, the kids have grown into the path of hearing those stories, but recognizing the spiritual values of what had come out of it. They're still being taught, and I'm still being taught, you know, and those parts of it just as much. But it really gets back to the communication basis that we've had with everybody of all agencies and all nations and all others that are out there, because it it brings back the values of our culture and what it had meant to us, because there was times that we were told that we didn't do the things that we are doing today, and the medicines that had come up and in its own ways were the values to show us and our ancestors that yes, you guys did this and you need to be proud for who you are and where it comes from. And our elders slowly gradually bringing out some of their old photos to talk their story about what it meant to them too, because again, with the history of how our elders were punished and beaten and taken away to not to tell their story, not to talk their language. And it's generations of where I know I didn't have that opportunity because it was something that my parents really didn't want us to know, but we still heard them talk the language privately. So it really brought up the generation gaps of having those opportunities. But the spiritual values of it is something that we're not ashamed of today. It's something that we're proud of. You bring the canoe journeys in and you see the pride and the joy, because everybody is so proud of their heritage and their culture and their upbringings and listening to the elders around the campsites or around the areas of being able to recognize the relatives that we have all over, and sharing those stories with one another of how the branches branch out and our connections tie in with other areas just as much.
That's so beautiful, Frances. And Senator, I want to also thank you for your observation about the broken promises and finally being able to make good on a promise to the Lower Elwha Klallam people and to restore the salmon to this river. And I think that's healing for all of us to actually finally see the country do the right thing. I want to take some questions from the audience. This one comes from Jeff Duda, who's a scientist who's been deeply involved in the recovery of the Elwha River from back when the dams were still in place, doing some of that original baseline monitoring and now carrying it all the way through to watch the response of the river and sharing that with the world. Here's his question. He says, the Elwha has become a worldwide symbol for what is possible with dam removal and river restoration. Can you discuss the implications of this small river and how it has changed the conversation in the Pacific Northwest, the US, and the rest of the world?
Well, I think it has shown that it is possible, that you can actually turn the clock back and nature will be there. You can remove what was placed across a river and return it to its natural state. To me, that's terribly exciting. And the Elwha is the example of that. The Elwha will be sighted everywhere, whether it's the Ob River in Russia or whether it's the Dnieper River or whatever, right? And it will be cited as what you can do and how you can, if you work together, what you can accomplish. I mean, I think the reflection in the Elwha that I see is what our country is capable of, not simply in the past, but tomorrow and for years to come. And it forms a template about how you can go about climate change or species protection or ocean conservation. And to me, that's the long-lasting effect of the Elwha for people who believe public policy makes a difference. And I don't know how anyone could dispute public policy makes a difference. And if they don't think so, bring them to the Elwha.
Right on. I want to take another question from the audience. Here it comes from Bill Westcott. What are the most important broken promises to our Native American communities that we should redress in this administration now that we have the first Native American member in history with Interior's Deb Haaland?
Where do you begin?
Where do you begin? Where do you start? I know I was flattened by that one too.
I mean, the list is long and the agony is great. And yeah, I can't tell you, I mean, when I was in the Senate, of course, I did a number of things with Native Americans. The Lumi fishing rights, for example, up in the state of Washington, how they're taxed. And I remember the 1876 Fort Laramie Treaty, right, with the Sioux.
Oh.
And then you had gold discovered in the Black Hills, and the whole thing was violated. So when I was in the Senate, I introduced a bill to give some of the public land back to the Sioux. You would have thought I was starting World War III. I mean, the idea is there's tremendous resistance to going back and making things right. And that is what the lesson of the Elwha is, that you can redeem broken promises. You can be reasonable. You can get people of both parties, of business, of nature, of every kind of interest group. And if you have a clear enough purpose, you can actually make something happen.
Bringing everything back to the language as an example, being able to fund it through the sources of the schools. That's something that a lot of the nations struggle with is being able to bring that language forth in the public setting on those ones. But the treaty right itself, it's the treaties itself.
Yeah, I saw a comment from one of the council members there in Port Angeles saying fully fund language immersion everywhere. Isn't that a good idea? You know, because in the language is the culture, and that's I like that idea. I want to take another question. This one is about the Lower Snake River dams, and there's a lot of discussion right now. I'm sure you've been following that Simpson proposal, take them down, replace the benefits. Question from the audience: what would your advice be for advocates for removal of the Lower Snake River dams?
Don't give up hope. Don't give up hope.
You can't say any better than that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, without that, what have you got, right?
I mean, you know, they get their science right, know what you're talking about, and then what the chairwoman said, don't give up hope.
Yeah, yeah. I think too that one of the things I'd like to call out is what the Elwha has meant for education about rivers and science and how it even works. I remember going out with a bunch of kids with NatureBridge. Frances, you'll remember this when this was so fun. B. Charles, Adeline Smith, we all went for a walk with youth enrolled in this program, the NatureBridge program, and we went for a walk out along the river, and B and Adeline were talking about scientific principles, but doing it from the position of their culture. And you could just watch the kids, you know, soak this up like sunshine. It was about science, but it was being spoken from their community. And we all went back up to that beautiful campus there, the Rosemary Inn and those lovely little cabins, you remember. And we had this magical night when B and Adeline shared stories, traditional stories, and we talked about the river, and we talked about the animals, and we talked about the place, that magical place. And it was this interweaving of culture and science and community that NatureBridge does so well, but that the Elwha has made possible for so many. I mean, I can't even imagine how many groups have come to the Elwha to learn about how a natural river really works and how rivers recover from being dammed. And we're going to continue that learning for generations to come. So,
And it's an opportunity.
One of the things you also accomplished is this teaching tool that is for science and for generations to come.
Yeah, I think one of the things that was really interesting to me was watching the kids, but also when they had the opportunity to go to the river and really look and watch with some of the staff what they were doing out there later on after that. But I mean, even down to the insects that are under the rocks in the river, studying them, the birds and everything else that goes with it. But it's amazing because I know with what the elders were talking about was having a respect for everything that they walked on, and everything. When you turned a rock over, you turned that rock back to where you had found it. So it was an opportunity not only for a classroom setting, but they had more of an understanding with the environment because they were out in the environment and having the touch and feel of the objects and the plants and seeing the nature itself, but understanding the animals, the bears, the elk, and the eagles, and what was in our areas that they needed to watch for the cougars, and you know, having those opportunities to be able to tell the story, but also explain it in the language so that they had understood it, and having a little quiz afterwards, kind of like a hide and seek aspects of it, of utilizing for the younger ones a bingo game so that they knew exactly what they were placing under the bingo, B-I-N-G, but the animals of how they were called out in the Klallam language. So it was a mixture. I mean, it was really a mixture, but the different age brackets that they had out there, not knowing for sure what they were dealing with, but once they recognized the fact of being able to do some basket weaving, being able to do identifying some of the herbs and the plants for their medicines, and what they have come forth with and utilizing it in different ways. We had a couple kids that were struggling with math, and having them plot off areas just as well, having the outfield work and environment for them help them understand more so than sitting in the classroom. So these are things that we want to see continue and happen, and really tell the stories. But listening, we've lost so many elders, but having them tell the stories from their parents, from their grandparents, and carrying those generations down.
You know, Lynda, I think some people are lake people, some people are ocean people,
Yeah.
and some people are river people. And I'm a river person. I think the river tells stories. And what it does, it reminds you that you're not stuck where you were. You could always get in a raft or go to a new place. And the fact that it's always moving and changing, and it tells you that that's the way life is. And so to me, it's good to know which one of those you are. I'm sure the ocean person and the lake person have a lot of meaning for people too. And I like them both, but I'm a river person.
Well, Frances, I don't have to ask you if you're a river person. You know, saying every river has its people, and I don't know who's luckier.
Yeah.
You,
The opportunity of
and your
driving
people, or the
by
river.
every day. Yeah, that's something that I really strive on, being able to go down there and watch it change seasonal, and seeing the beauty and the nature of what we have is it's really overwhelming with words on describing what we have here with the beauty that we have.
I wonder, we're going to have to wrap up pretty soon, and I can't resist asking for just some from the heart advice from you each. You're giants, you're elders, you led the way, you lit the candle, you lit the flame, you did something nobody else has done. And for all the people out there who are trying very hard in their lives to do something, whatever it is, can you tell us a little bit about what they should do?
Never give up. I mean, you have the struggles, you have your ups and downs, but you really have not only your parents, your grandparents, your friends, your relatives that will always stand you up one way or the other, and really believe in yourself and in those times. Really take a look on the opportunities that are surrounding you that you may not even recognize at that point in time, but take a breath and sit back. I mean, even today, it's still hard to believe that what we have accomplished. And going back and looking at some of those photos and some of the ones that we had lost, but they were the encouragement. Your loved ones are always the encouragement, because you hear them in the back of your head telling you, go for it, through that process. And really don't give up hope. Don't ever give up hope. I mean, you have your ups and downs, and you have those voices that will keep telling you to go, and you have your support from your communities, and those that are not even within your community as your friends, those that you meet outside with what you accomplish, those that are in other territories. And because it wasn't about us, it was about recognizing the habitats and recognizing the need for the salmon recovery of our rivers, but also recognizing the food sources that were there that weren't there for our community members. But going back and looking at those old times, I know when I would be out there with my mother, cleaning fish. I mean, sometimes those fish were almost bigger than what I was at that point in time, and having the opportunities of putting them in the smokehouse. And then also recognizing the fact of how my dad burned down our smokehouse because he overloaded it with wood, so, but it's things that we laugh about today, and it's the teachings that we've had through our years of generations, and something that we still have to continue on through the tasks of it. I tell you, just give hope, have your prayers, and keep a positive avenue of it, because you will have your challenges, you will have your barriers, and take those challenges as you move forward.
I'll give the final word to the chairwoman. I just want to say with how great a feeling of gratitude I have for being on this journey with you, Chairwoman Charles, and the whole Elwha Klallam Tribe. And Lynda, thank you.
Oh gosh. Thank you both. You made me cry. You made me laugh. You made me glad to be alive on this planet at the same time that you are. So, you know, tonight, thank you to both of you from my heart, and to everyone listening. You know, if you ever feel this big, remember these leaders. Look to them. Remember these words tonight. Thank you all.
Hutninson.
Hutninson.
It's an honor to see you.
Hi,
Hope to
Scott.
see you soon in person. Both of you. Thank you.
Thank you.